using digital signatures to prove identity through asymmetric encryption, which is just public-private keys. We're able to enforce reader-write access. Also, using kind of cryptographic hashes to compute these puzzles, we're able to securely append transactions to the blockchain. And in Immutable, that we use consensus mechanisms that make it hard to change records. Only after something is accepted is it added to the blockchain, and then that whole blockchain is downloaded by the next node to try to compute the next block. So there's this concept of public and private keys, and in the cryptocurrency world, there's a common saying that if you don't have your private keys, you don't have crypto. And it utilizes this idea of asymmetric, or one side doesn't match the other cryptography. And the easiest way I kind of look at this, or I explain this to people, is it's like having a username and password in Venmo, where the private key is your password and the username is what you publicly show the world to get that money. And these are in the form of hexadecimal addresses, like that AX123 type of address. In Bitcoin, there are so many combinations of addresses where it's practically impossible for anyone to overlap when randomly generating public keys. So there's an opportunity for every person in the world to have unique addresses. And the way that you access these wallets or access this money in this ledger is by getting your private key. And so your private key is to be protected and given to nobody. And that's really all you need to have access to this blockchain. So there's this idea of mining. A lot of you might have been hearing about, Bitcoin mining taking a lot of energy. And this is the consensus mechanism. What it is like I was mentioning before, each node or each computer kind of adding to the blockchain sends their transactions to other nodes, and then computers who are mining via cryptographic hash or this one-way function compete to solve this puzzle. And the computer that wins adds the block to the blockchain and receives a reward, usually in the native cryptocurrency of that blockchain. So, for example, in the Ethereum blockchain, you get Ethereum for successfully mining the next block. You get Bitcoin for mining the next block on the Bitcoin blockchain. And then after this is accepted, the next round begins where the computers that are mining add to the next block. This is known as proof of work, where anyone can add to the blockchain, and it's pretty costly to do so because you have to have computational power to just add it. And so if you can correct the proof of mining, it can be reasonably assumed that you had to do the work or expend electricity to find it. So what this does is it forces for someone to, in order to alter the whole chain, to remine every block that comes after their transaction. However, since all the miners in the network are already working on the next transaction, this is practically impossible to do, needing 51% of the entire network to process the output. So these bad blocks that aren't part of the chain end up being conceived as dead and not part of the current blockchain. And it's very hard to manipulate, especially for a blockchain like Bitcoin, which has been being appended and publicly accepted by the miners for since 2009. It's been about 11, 12 years now. So here are the kind of 7 fundamental principles of why blockchain is important: data integrity, distributed power, value as an incentive, security, privacy, and rights preserved, and inclusion. So the idea of data integrity is that, without a central source of truth, who can you trust? Like if there's not one plug for the information, how can you say it's valid? And the way that blockchains solve this is it's a peer-to-peer network that really makes it very costly to change data to, as we mentioned, through the mining as a consensus system. Then distributed power, how can we trust something with a third party? And this is why we have users participating in the network to maintain the network. However, there's some scrutiny in things like Bitcoin, which end up resulting in mining pools where a lot of the people who actually do the mining end up being centralized. But theoretically, if everybody is kind of independently mining and rewarded accordingly, that results in a decentralized network. And that's kind of how I look at blockchain rather than cryptocurrency. I look at blockchain as a database architecture where the servers are everywhere, and so that kind of implies different use cases, which I'll go on a little bit later. Then it's like, how do you incentivize people that are driven by different incentives? And that goes back to rewarding people in Bitcoin or Ethereum or the native currency of the block in order to maintain the network. We don't really care if people are in here because they're anarcho-capitalist or libertarians or have this kind of fundamental belief that Bitcoin is new money. At the end of the day, the miners are mining because they get money for it. Then there's security. Normally, in order to compromise system or a database, you have to get super user access, and then you can get the whole database. However, with this asymmetric encryption, in order to compromise a database, you can only really compromise an individual. So it's up to you to keep your private keys secure, and also to not associate your public keys with your real identity, because it is a blockchain, it is a ledger that can easily be tracked, even though more hops or more transactions might lead to more abstraction in your identity if you initially revealed it. Then there is privacy, which goes on to the point that I previously mentioned, that data exposure can prove your identity, and especially in something like cryptocurrency, which has a lot of use cases. This in turn can result in all of your financial transactions or data or most sensitive information being exposed on the internet. And this eliminates the need to trust others, because you're simply like, you can have millions of addresses. People don't know it's you unless at some point you revealed it's you and didn't do much to abstract that was you. There's also the concept of preserving rights. So a lot of us, we have kind of terms and services we agree to companies that we overlook. And this constantly changes. However, with blockchains, what the original blockchain was is always going to stay the same. And people are just appending transactions onto that. And to change that original blockchain is really just creating a new blockchain or creating a fork with your own set of rules that has to be publicly accepted. The code is the contract, and everybody knows that this is publicly accepted. If you're agreeing to having Bitcoin or having Ethereum, you're not going to be there's not going to be a new Ethereum terms of services that tells you a whole bunch of different stuff, unless there's a direct fork. And then there is inclusion, and this kind of will go into the concept of what DeFi is and the importance of this. So half of the world, and this is and a lot of this information is coming from a PowerPoint in 2019. So it's a little bit better now, but half of the world as of 2019 didn't have a bank account. And because there is no kind of KYC or barriers to entry and anybody can make a wallet, this allows for access to a global financial system, which any banks can't say the same. So here's a brief history of money and how it's evolving. I'm not going to go too in depth to this because we're going to kind of cover this in our tokenomics workshop in a few weeks, where we actually design how do we plan out a token in order for it to have longevity as money. But we started with a barter system. And then we started using cowrie shells as our first kind of accountable, itemable money system. Then, in 600 BC, we started minting coins. And then, that became too heavy. We started with banknotes, and then the plastic money, where kind of the rise of digital currency in 1950, and then Bitcoin introducing this in a decentralized way. And there are two kind of fundamental views of money: the Keynesian economic model and the Austrian economic model. But I'm not going to go too into that. I'm just going to kind of explain the parallels of Bitcoin and gold, and contrast it to the rise and fall of the dollar. And again, this data is from 2019. but it's only become exacerbated with a lot of the money now today, especially with stimulus being printed and devaluing the dollar. And so the idea behind both Bitcoin and gold is there's a finite amount of gold available in the world. Similarly, there is 21 million Bitcoins. Creating no gold or even creating new gold or digging gold is complex and expensive. That can be equated to cryptocurrency mining, gold mining with crypto mining. You have to put in a lot of work to actually get that Bitcoin, and there's only a limited amount. And instead of mining Bitcoins, or mining gold, you can buy Bitcoin, you can buy gold. You don't have to be the miner. So the contrast is very similar as opposed to money, which keeps on being printed, which the Federal Reserve can print whenever, and so that's kind of the contrast between Bitcoin and gold as a store of value. And this is of 2019, kind of major blockchain consortia and networks that are adopting this. In the past, especially a year, this has only gone up with things with organizations like BlackRock, Square, PayPal. Basically, every major organization that moves money has adopted Bitcoin or blockchain technology in one form or the other, whether it's as a cryptocurrency or as an infrastructural database solution. And so, blockchain is here to stay, for sure. And I wouldn't say that price is reflected on this adoption. So don't be confused with that, because again, this is around 2-3 years old, and these are major institutions. And so again, this is from 2019, so you can kind of see how adoption changed over time, and where we are today. So in terms of the ecosystem in blockchain, there are a tremendous amount of use cases. And this is why I was mentioning the parallel between a database and a blockchain, because every single thing in the world uses a database. And a blockchain is really just a decentralized database. So in theory, everything can be put on a blockchain, and especially financial services, exchanges, infrastructure, mining, news and data, payments, service, and wallets. And here are kind of examples of that, again, as of 2019. So one thing that I kind of think is underemphasized is that blockchain is interdisciplinary, and that anybody can have a role in it, whether it's in computer science, math, economics, law, philosophy. Everyone can be part of the conversation. And if you think that, oh, how do I get in the blockchain industry? I might not be in these fields. I'm telling you, if you have a conversation with me, we can find you a fit. Because at the end of the day, literally every single field can be applied to blockchain. And that's why you don't have to be someone working on the back end. You can be someone working on the front end. You can be someone as a lawyer. And that's where kind of the interesting idea of smart contracts come about. But I'm going back to the point of the unbanked and kind of setting the precedent for what DeFi is. And so there's over 1.7 billion people. So these are the DeFi slides are more updated. But there's over 1.7 billion people that are unbanked or don't have a bank account, or not part of the global financial system, which poses as a huge disadvantage, especially with globalization now and us having access to the internet. Having access to banking systems gives us kind of credits for interacting with the world. And kind of the biggest barriers are, well, overall, a lack of money. Like, why would I have a bank account if I have no money? Which is kind of something that cryptocurrency solves, because you could have a wallet, you can make a wallet for free and just have it. There are a lot of barriers to entry, like having an ID, or even another barrier of entry is no access to brick and mortar institutions. For example, in sub-Saharan Africa, there are no banks, so why would I start a bank account? And similarly, you guys might not get a certain bank in your area because they don't have an ATM there, and the transaction fees are high. So kind of the lack of institutions is a big hurdle as well. But also overall lack of trust. Like, people don't trust banking systems, especially after 2008. There's just an overall lack of trust in these centralized banking systems. In addition to these barriers of entry, can pose as complete kind of isolation from this overall system. So recently, in the past kind of 3 or 4 years, there is this, well, really in 2015, there's this idea of DeFi or decentralized finance. And this is a revolutionary form of finance that frees individuals from the dependence of traditional financial intermediaries, basically taking out the middleman, utilizing smart contracts to enable complex transactions like lending, speculation, trading, insurance, and interest. The DeFi world on the front end is built on dApps or decentralized applications that modify or add on to these public ledgers or these public blockchains using these complex smart contract protocols, typically integrated through a wallet or a Web3 wallet. And you guys, for a lot of y'all working on the DeFi, on a lot of these dApp apps, you'll be actually integrating a Web3 wallet. And so the smart contracts and DeFi protocols are usually open source where you can directly look at code and are contributed by community developers, like the one we have at DeFi Summer. Originally, like we mentioned before, Bitcoin enabled a peer-to-peer payment system in 2009, and Ethereum, which actually came from the Vitalik in the Bitcoin developer community in 2015, allowed for people to build smart contracts and actually make tokens on top of those contracts. So a lot of these tokens you see nowadays are really just built on Ethereum. So DeFi's beginning is often traced to MakerDAO in 2015, which allowed users to use cryptocurrency as collateral for loans. So just like you put your house up to get a loan in the bank, you can now put up certain cryptocurrency to get other cryptocurrencies or that same cryptocurrency using that as leverage for that. Then in 2017, you guys might have realized the ICO boom or the initial coin offering boom, and this gave prominence to a bunch of Ethereum projects, which laid the foundation for what DeFi is today. So this is the Aves, the Ren, the Synthetics, the ORX, the Bancor. And this popularized the user to contract model as opposed to the user to user model that Bitcoin, that P2P model that was originally made in 2009. And then I think one of the most kind of popular DEXs or decentralized exchanges was in Uniswap in 2018, funded by the Ethereum Foundation. Well, funded completely by the Ethereum Foundation in 2018. In July 2019, Synthetics completely changed the game when they launched their first liquidity incentive program, where you basically got crypto for providing liquidity in the market. And I'll explain what that means a little bit later. And so, kind of what in the summer of 2020, what's considered the DeFi summer, the liquidity mining program by Compound, which gave you native comp tokens for lending and borrowing on their platform, and then that comp token allowed you to have governance, or just like you're a citizen of the United States, if you pay taxes, you can vote in the election. It's a similar concept. If you're using the platform and you have comp tokens, you can vote on what happens on that platform. So this combination of rewarding in a native token for using a platform, and then also governance, really kind of put DeFi on the map and kind of gave rows to DEXs. And then the idea of aggregating kind of the composability between these plug and play DeFi protocols was really popularized right after that with Yearn Finance, and aggregating kind of the best yield farming options, and then rewarding with the Wi-Fi governance token for providing liquidity. And originally, based looking on the prices, you might think Wi-Fi is pegged to the price of Bitcoin, but it actually started at $6, and then it quickly rose to 30K to 40K there. And so let me just put some graphs up here to kind of explain the DeFi summer. So this is in 2020, and you can see that first it was Compound, then it was Wi-Fi, then it was a bunch of like food-based applications, and sushi and Uniswap, and basically nowadays every single thing in traditional financial institutions, they're making a protocol to add on to that. And in comparison, going from April 2020 to September 2020, you could see that Uniswap hit 100x, and that's what we want to kind of replicate with this DeFi Summer 2.0 in 2021. We want to build to the ecosystem and then cause this new boom of DeFi protocols. And so here are the simple advantages of DeFi. You can send and receive money from anywhere around the world within seconds, and especially with layer two solutions like Matic or different blockchains like Harmony and Avalanche and things like that. It makes it incredibly quick, and transaction fees that actually beat traditional financial systems. You can have access to global funds, not being limited to funds in the custody of your break. So as long as you memorize your private key or write it down, you can bring it across borders and regenerate your wallet and have that value on deck. There's also the idea of stable coins or wrap coins, tokens that are pegged to another asset, so you can have a full exposure to all asset types. And pretty soon they're going to have these protocols are going to be applied to stocks. I mean, some of them like Google and Tesla are already there, where you can invest in all assets directly on these protocols. And then this is one of the most appealing things about DeFi, that there is, you can borrow or take a loan or even invest in trade with no KYC or no ID checks, which KYC stands for Know Your Customer laws. And yeah, this again allows for anybody to participate. And then the transparency of looking at these protocols, you can see how the system works and where the money is. You can follow the trail, you can follow the code, and there is no unintended behavior in these protocols. There's also kind of the idea that we mentioned in the Yearn Finance of the ability to plug and play different DeFi apps and protocols. And then there's also, instead of incentivizing a bank to move money, we're basically paying out individuals for their proportionate amount of liquidity or I'll explain a little bit later, but for being a market maker, we give them the fees directly. And so going more into that concept, there's this idea of automated market makers. They allow digital assets to be traded in a permissionless and automatic way, using liquidity pools rather than a traditional market of buyers and sellers. So traditionally, there would be a centralized exchange, and there's an order book, and for whatever you order, they give you that, and then they get the fees. However, what an automated market maker does is it incentivizes individuals to provide a pair. So the reason why I'm able to trade from a USDC or USDT or Ethereum to Bitcoin is because individuals provided that much amount, half and half, and it allowed you from swapping from one to the other, and the fees that you pay goes directly to the individuals based on how much of the pool they provided. So if for example on Uniswap, if I were to be providing 500,000 in Ethereum and 500,000 in Bitcoin, and there's only a million in the pool, meaning that I was providing all the liquidity or all the tradable amount of that pair, the fees would go 100% to me because I provide 100% of the pools. So it's not going to the exchange, it's going to the individual. And this model allows for anybody to provide liquidity for any pair and these whole kind of aggregate markets to happen. And there are a bunch of popular ones like Uniswap, SushiSwap, anything with the swap kind of name that utilizes the system. So that's kind of how it's built on that end. And it's based on this constant product formula, which is just X times Y equals K, or token A balance P times token B balance equals K. And so this is the DeFi stack. So there are kind of four different layers. There's the settlement layer, there's a protocol layer, there's an application layer, and there's the aggregation layer. So the settlement layer is like, in the first couple of slides where I mentioned blockchain. Like Bitcoin is the blockchain, they reward you, for their native currency. Similarly, Ethereum is the blockchain and they reward you in ETH. That's the settlement layer. The protocol layer, in the example I mentioned, would be Uniswap and Uniswap's router, the actual code built on top of Ethereum to ensure that you could provide liquidity and gain fees. That would be the protocol layer, the Ethereum Uniswap protocol or Enzymes protocol. The application will be the actual Uniswap app, the front end that utilizes kind of the backend protocol and allows the consumer to interact with the contracts directly. If the application layer was down, you as a user can directly interact with the smart contracts, and kind of bypass the application layer because the protocol layer is what really matters. But the application layer is the front end that makes it easy for us to understand. And then there's the aggregation layer, which which is kind of the example of Yearn that I mentioned, the plug and play composability part of it. So collecting from various applications and then analyzing different instruments to maximize returns. So it's the curves and the 1 inches and the Yearns that take all these different protocols or all these different front ends and puts them together and lets you know which one is most optimal. And so this is all from DeFi Pulse, which is a good way of understanding different DeFi protocols or even finding DeFi protocols is and something I really want to show you is a lot of this total value locked or the amount of money in these protocols has come in the past year. And there's over 56 billion TVL with Aave, one of kind of the most popular lending platforms on Ethereum, and then the layer 2 Matic making 15% of this. And so you can see like there are chains like Aave, and I think a lot of these are taken. You can see how much money is being locked in. And for people who are not from the development standpoint, this tool can be used kind of to maximize yields and returns. And the reason why this adoption is so critical as opposed to other use cases is because this is really money and turning money systems into a decentralized way. So there's huge volumes being moved, and the fees are, especially with Matic, becoming extremely cheap and incentivizing more complex contracts as a result. Because if kind of adding to a contract where Ethereum gas fees or so gas fees are really just the money you give to miners for adding to the transaction. And so if the gas fees are kind of high, complex transactions kind of compound the gas fees. And when it costs a few $100s to do something like options or derivatives, that's going to de-incentivize the retail investor. But nowadays, transactions are a fraction of a cent on these layer 2 protocols, and it gives room to make more complex financial instruments that normally wasn't here about a year ago. And so here are kind of some DeFi drawbacks. And right after this, I'm going to open some room for questions. I know this is very quick and I didn't go over everything, but there is the centralization of oracles. So what an oracle is a price feed. It's like an API that lets all these DeFi protocols, know this is the price for this asset. So if that is centralized, that means kind of the whole price feed across all DeFi protocols will be centralized as well. So a common example of an oracle is Chainlink. And so then there's also smart contract security issues where although it's transparent, that transparency, if it's not properly audited or given 100% consideration, kind of more astute smart contract developers can find exploitations and then kind of drain money from that system. And there's a whole bunch of ways to do so. I think we're going to have a security a smart contract workshop later in July. And then there's also bad actors. If there's money to be got, some people are going to come in here and try to exploit the system, and I don't blame them. Actually, this is not legal advice, and but I highly recommend people to start exploiting systems now before adoption is taking place, because finding the vulnerabilities now is better than finding it after that super mass adoption happens. So I'm just going to leave the floor up to questions. If anybody has one or has any, just feel free to kind of start that discussion. Anybody? All right.
I have a question. Yeah. What are some of the exciting DeFi applications you see being built nowadays that you think have some potential, and what you want to see come out of DeFi Summer?
Yeah, and so so one thing that I really appreciate is, let me just exit out. I really like Enzyme Financing, which is actually a sponsor for this hackathon. But the reason why we reached out is because this allows for it's a very good use case of how traditional financial systems are ported on to Ethereum and then later layer 2 solutions. And so what this allows for anyone to do is to invest, basically have a hedge fund where anybody can invest, and the performance, the share price is reflected on the performance of the underlying assets. So I can directly invest in this USF fund and then basically make gains based on how much they perform. And to me, that's like that just enables anyone to have a hedge fund. So traditionally, in terms of legal paperwork, it would cost $20,000 to start a hedge fund, and this allows someone to do it in an anonymous fashion, in a transparent and real-time way. So if I invest in a hedge fund, they have quarterly reports, and I don't know what they're investing in. I kind of just trust the money, and leave it to be. But here, I can check every day and actually get notifications of what they're buying, what the fund performance is. I can see who who is the manager. I can see how evenly distributed the so this person has 100% of the shares, but I can see how many different people are invested. I can see their total growth. I can see when people came in. Basically, all the data is transparent, and it allows anyone to do it in a cheap way. And so, yeah, that's something that I really appreciate as well. There's also, like I mentioned, like 1inch, and I think the aggregation game, because there's so many different platforms, and that's kind of how that's the onboarding process. So what these yield farming protocols will do at the beginning is they'll give you very high, like I'm talking like there's some that give you 1,600 APR like a day, where you can make off like 20K, you can make like 600, 700 bucks a day, just from yield farming, because they want you to basically provide liquidity and then make their markets, basically add more total value locked to their markets, and then they reward you in their native token, just like kind of the compound example that we made, to make these ecosystems more vibrant. So there's, especially with the DeFi culture, a lot of degenerates who kind of want this early information. They will invest in these protocols and start yield farming based on their returns. So things like these aggregators, like 1inch, is they let you know which platforms you can have the best return, and I think that's another good kind of use case. And in terms of looking for new projects, that's why I recommend going to DeFi Pulse. They tell you even within different spaces, like in lending or DEXs, like, and this is a screenshot I showed, which ones have more TVL, or even DApp Radar is another thing that I use in terms of seeing blockchain dApps in certain spaces. Coin Market Cap has kind of a DeFi category. Yeah, one thing that I really kind of appreciate right now is Thorchain, or otherwise known as Rune, because they allow you to swap between different blockchains, and I think that's kind of the next step, allowing for everything to happen in complete liquidity, where I can change Bitcoin for Ethereum for Matic, and gain rewards for it. That's something that I look for. But does anyone else have any kind of, I know Vishal is here. I know you. I know Vishal looks at DeFi projects heavily a lot, so you might have some examples. But if Zane wants to ask a question, we can.
Yes, sorry. Quick question. So Thorchain, I did not know that you could switch between blockchains. I was thinking, I don't know if I should ask this now, but I was thinking about a project. I was wondering, so when somebody creates a hedge fund on Enzyme, or I guess any kind of a fund, is there a way to like treat that as a token so that other people can trade it?
Some enzyme for Enzyme, basically, when you invest, let's go to minority venture capital, for example. So the price is $1.06. So say you got 5,000 worth, you would have 5,000 divided by 106, and you have that much shares in there, and it would be like NF shares. Right now, there isn't a way to transfer shares out of the protocol. It's really just you have to buy it and then sell it, but they're building that. Like, you can actually sell it as a share. Well, you can even see the because building this out. So one of our challenges is on enzyme.canny.io is their public ticketing system. So one of their so you can actually see like exactly what they're working on here, and that's what I like about DeFi. Like, they're very transparent. You can put your request and see what's going on. But like, yeah, you're gonna be able to transfer shares. Oh shoot, they're on Matic too. So right now for funds, like it costs a lot of money to even make a trade or make a transaction.
So are they on Matic?
What?
Are they on Polygon now too?
I mean, Polygon is like Matic rebranding. So when they mean Matic, they
right.
mean. Oh no! I don't think they're on Matic. I think that means they added Matic as a token. Yeah, I don't think they're on Matic.
Oh, okay.
Someone had requested for them to go on Matic though. I remember seeing that there. And they also, you can take loans out and lending for a specific enzyme price track. However, what is the challenge is to they built an SDK which interacts directly with the enzyme protocol, and so and allows you to sell and trade at certain amounts. So developing a front end that easily allows fund managers to kind of see how their portfolio will be breaking down or set target and sell prices, and then interact with the protocol, that's the challenge. Because in terms of kind of legal ramifications, if you're able to say, no, my fund was not discretionary, it traded based on what the bot did, then the liability goes on that, and it takes way less liabilities on the trader. So that's something that is needed, and that's been expressed by fund managers and delegated traders. So with Enzyme in particular, like you can actually have people be delegated traders and fund managers, where you can whitelist specific wallets to make trades as a fund. So similarly in like traditional hedge fund, and you can even see the rule set here. So here you can see that every time someone puts money in the fund, 0.5% is burned. 0.5% is given as a management fee, and then every 30 days, the performance fee is given to the traders and the fund manager of 20%. So if they make 100% returns, 20% of that is given directly to the fund managers and the delegated traders. But did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was a good explanation. Also, anybody trying to do any liquidity mining, there's a pool on QuickSwap that's doing 3,500% if anybody's interested.
Yeah, and
sorry, that was done.
And this is why I was kind of explaining like the yield farming model. So what QuickSwap is, it's Polygon's it is basically a Uniswap fork on Polygon. Yeah. And I actually linked a Uniswap fork tutorial. And when you realize what a lot of these blockchains are doing, there is no bigger industry that jacks other projects because it's all open source than blockchain. And you see, like, this is clearly Uniswap, a fork. They just changed the assets, and they changed the network, which is kind of one line of code, well, a few lines of code where you just change the addresses. And so because of it being so fairly new, and they want to adopt more people, they'll do these high APRs, so it incentivizes you to put on the platform. And that's why people are always constantly trying to jump on these platforms. And that's why you very well can like make your own exchange, especially on a new chain, and get people to use it. And it's not much hard code because it's all open source. So if you go to Uniswap right here, you can that's uniswap.org. Let me go to the exchange. If you go to Uniswap, which one is that? That app? Is it app? Okay, this is uniswap.org. Use Uniswap.
If you just click use Uniswap in the top right,
Oh, it's app.uniswap. And you see, this is the same UI. They straight up jacked it.
It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, no, like they forked the project, they forked the front end, they changed the assets. Like you could literally do this. And this is actually for minority programmers, this is actually a test whether for the blockchain engineering terms, whether you can fork Uniswap and change assets. And this is what originally happened with SushiSwap, which is kind of a Uniswap fork on the Binance Smart Chain. And then on top of that, then PancakeSwap.
It's all the same.
Well, at least PancakeSwap changed the UI, and this is why I think more UI UX developers need to be in the blockchain space, because PancakeSwap changed their UI. Like everyone started forking them. Like you can see off PancakeSwap, one of the most popular forks is ApeSwap, and where they're kind of rewarding bananas. And you see it's the same UI. And then upon that, like how we kind of look for so I mentioned DApp radars and DeFi Pulse, but even DeFi tools. And when I was mentioning that, like, there's the application layer and there's a protocol layer, what DeFi tool does is if the front end goes down, say so you can check on the Whois records, like what type of hosting service they use. And a lot of them is on Cloudflare. And say the Cloudflare service goes down or whatever, or like they have a DDoS attack where you can't take out your funds because there's no front end. You can go on VFAT tools, which checks the contracts, and you can directly use your wallet connect, which is like whether it's on your phone or MetaMask or whatever, and directly take out and interact with the contracts through here. But this is kind of also somehow we get alpha, and you got to make sure that everything is audited by a trusted organization, or they checked every line of code to see if it's valid. But like we'll start looking at, okay, what are the yield farming places on Binance Smart Chain? There's so many. All right, we start clicking on each one, going to the info and then seeing, and a lot of these we'll see by the UI. Oh, this is a PancakeSwap fork, and so like that's basically what a lot of us will do. We'll be like, okay, this is a project I want to check out. What? This has a whole different UI. A lot of times that's what convinces us. Like if they did enough effort to not completely copy, that gauges our interest, and then we check the audit, make sure it's valid. And sometimes like these are really slick. Sometimes they'll give you an audit, but it'll be they literally copied the audit like link. So a lot like for example, like there is our Phantom, like there was this thing called Greenhouse. So we went on Greenhouse and we saw that you could get for one BNB you can get 1 million Phantom, and we're like, what? And so we just started kind of bridging our assets and putting it on there, and we're like, okay. But then after we put our money in and then we lost all our money, we checked the audit and it was the audits for PantherSwap. So it's like they really copy the code, like to the point where if you look in the code, the variables will be the same variables, the comments will be the same. Like I've never seen like this amount of degenerate plagiarism other than the blockchain space. And so that's why I highly encourage for people to learn audits. And a lot of people will get hit to audits because they're putting their money like this has 26 grand in it and doesn't have an audit. Like that's crazy, and that's what's emerging in this space. And a lot of these projects happen, like all these PancakeSwap happened in like February. When the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem came about, because it came from like at that time gas fees were like a couple $100. So like every transaction you made, you have to pay the miners, the computers, a couple $100. But Binance Smart Chain allowed you to do it for like 10 cents. And so it's like, oh, what? I can make a trade for 10 cents. I'm gonna just try everything. And you can even see things like Ethereum gas fees to even keep track of like what how much GUI which is the denomination for gas fees is currently in the network. And so when there's more congestion or more people using the network, the gas is high. Like you spend a lot of gas when there's a lot of traffic on the street. It's similarly it's the same thing. Like if I'm in order to get somewhere in the DeFi space, I need to pay gas. Or I need to, or to get my car somewhere, I need to pay gas. It's a similar concept. Every transaction requires you to pay off the miners to add it to the ledger. And that's kind of the essential questions when I'm looking at other blockchains to use. Like, what's the gas? What's the transaction per second? And what did they compromise to achieve that? And so there's something called the blockchain trilemma. So like if you look here, and this is like this triangle that is like you can only pick 2 out of the 3. Let me just put it here. So there's either decentralization, scalability, and security. And for Binance Smart Chain, they compromise decentralization because a lot of the nodes that run this blockchain are owned by Binance Smart Chain, and that's kind of one way that they compromise as well. Some people will compromise security, and so then this goes into more of a computer science question of like, how do I achieve better results? And you'll see some things like Solana, which is incredibly fast, using Rust, which is a more systems level language as opposed to JavaScript. As opposed to Solidity, which is more kind of like JavaScript in its in the where it's less systems level, where kind of interacting directly with a lower level language allows for more faster transactions is a solution. Some people like Hawthorne, they implement blockchains, which is like a linked list, and DAGs. Some of y'all might notice DAGs from computer science, a directed acyclic graph, kind of combining those 2 elements to speed up the transaction speeds that way. That's more on the computer science element, like how do I invent better blockchains? But traditionally, yeah, like centralization is a way to achieve this. And a lot of times you might not even need something to be decentralized. Like if you're making a gaming platform, like you don't like no one really cares if your gaming platform is decentralized. They really just want it to be fast and working. So if really it's just like the like Microsoft owning the whole server and it being fast because of that, people are okay with that. But they can still make it a blockchain because all the transactions are public and you can use a block explorer. So all these blockchains will have a native block explorer. So Etherscan is one. And so every time you send a transaction in your wallet, you can even see them here. And you can see all the transactions going on here and you can filter by transactions. So a lot of time if someone gives us their address, we will track them. We'll see where their money was going to, who they're paying off, how often, whether we think the wallet was there. Like you can see everything there, but we don't know who it is unless you're like, yo, just send this money to this wallet, then we'll know. And that's kind of called on-chain analysis. So each blockchain has their own block explorer, and then even in here, you can look at like different contracts. You can see like exactly how much money is in everybody's wallet. You can see everything. You can see, so this is going to Uniswap, like, and it's pending. What some people will do, like they'll see that you're sending a transaction, and for Ethereum, which is relatively slow, like it might take a few hours, they'll pay higher gas fees to incentivize the miner to cancel your transaction. So that's what some slick kids will do. Like they'll send you bread, you're like, oh, it's pending, I got it. Then they'll send the bread to someone else and make it quicker, and then give you out your money. So there's like, and that's why kind of knowledge of understanding these explorers and understanding like how the blockchains work is essential because people are really getting licked out here.
Nice. All right. Well, that was great explanation. I have two questions. What do you think is going to happen with Uniswap V3? I heard somebody on Binance Smart Chain forked it, but they had some legal license that they didn't want it to be forked. I don't know if you heard of that.
Yeah. So like I was saying, like the plagiarism in the blockchain space is so much. Like you saw how many Uniswap forks there was, and then PancakeSwap, and like that they're not even open source. They're delaying when they're releasing their open source code because they're scared of a bunch of people jacking it. And so I'm not really too hip to Uniswap 3. I know they're using optimistic rollups, which is a layer 2 solution to speed up the transactions, but when it comes down to it, like what really motivates people is profits and gains. And if another platform can provide higher fees and then has more liquidity, and like then I don't think Uniswap will make it per se. And the ecosystem is changing. Like there is a new project literally every day. There's nothing kind of in comparison in the tech startup world to the numbers of new projects happening on these blockchains. Like my friend had a bot that like explicitly looked for new coins coming out, and launching a new coin is so easy. Like you can launch a coin, provide liquidity on Uniswap or QuickSwap like that. Like on Matic, it's so cheap to launch a coin. Let me show you my boy Gajesh. He's like a 15. I don't know why I just Googled Gajesh like we pop up, but how to launch a token on Matic. Like for cents, if you're on the Matic blockchain, honestly, like I got like a 10 cent. I'll send everyone like 10 cents of Matic just to like play around with this if they want to do that. But just ask me. Like this 15-year-old kid's making tutorials on how to write and deploy ERC contract, and a lot of these I just shared a link to Open Zeppelin. All of these contracts are available. But he even says like Ethereum gas fees is 200, Matic gas fees are a cent. And he shows you how to actually have your token listed on QuickSwap. And so people are making it every day, and you can detect like literally like that's how we know like the market was kind of gonna crash when there's like a bunch of tokens coming with no utility. You can really see that. But yeah, it's mad easy to do this, and this link is there. So I highly encourage. This will take 10 minutes. You can say you launched the token on Matic, not on the testnet, on the mainnet for a cent. And so, yeah, student of class 7, sort of program at the ages. Gajesh is the boy. Whoever can link me over Gajesh, like, yeah, link me over Gajesh because he's out here teaching people how to make tokens, and it's really, really easy. Like 10-minute tutorial. That's all it'll take. Any other questions?
Well, what do you think about ICP?
The Internet I mean, I'm not too familiar. All I know is they came out the blue and were able to like raise so much money, like billions out the blue. But I like the whole idea of decentralized file storage or decentralized computing. I'm not too really sure. I haven't done that much research.
Yeah, the only reason I asked is because when you were talking about the trilemma, I just thought about it because their process for selecting node operators is really centralized because they have that one organization that supposedly governs the whole thing. That's the only reason I asked.
Yeah, and that's kind of how blockchain companies choose to adopt node operators is very essential to whether it's centralized or not. But it's kind of really hard to incentivize individuals to set up their own nodes. But like for example, Stellar, who's a sponsor for this hackathon as well, they have their own blockchain, and their kind of policy for doing is having third parties that are more enterprise solutions as being their node operators. So going to traditional database companies or traditional banks and saying you run the node. Although that kind of makes it so it's semi decentralized. It allows the blockchain to be used more, and so there's kind of a trade-off on like how you're getting adoption, and then how centralized it is as well. But I do like the idea of IPFSs, like interplanetary file systems, that allow individuals, just like you're kind of running computation power, you're running part of a server which hosts files. And even if you're part of the NFT track, you can actually use post something to the IPFS and deploy your NFT accordingly. So to me, that's incredible. And that has a lot of rooms for putting data that can't be censored, which can currently be done on blockchains. For example, like in the Binance Smart Chain, because it was kind of came from China. It's based in I think Hong Kong or Singapore. I forgot. But like in order to see whether they would take down the Chinese government would take down Binance Smart Chain, because they're notorious for taking down anybody who goes against the government, even kind of doing kidnappings and extradition in the States for even dissenters of the government. Someone actually made the whole Tiananmen Square on chain to see whether they take it down, and they couldn't. So there's kind of different ways that degenerates are testing out whether something is truly decentralized, which I highly encourage anyone to just use blockchain as a way to basically question the authority in government to see how valid it is. So I highly encourage degenerate behavior. But does that answer your question? I kind of went off on it.
Yeah, no, that was good. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so it's been about an hour. So the next couple of workshops, I put up the schedule on the Excel. We'll have stuff on blockchain consultancy. So if your friends aren't into tech, or into business or anything, like the ability to go to small businesses and enterprises and recommend them blockchain as a solution for their business, that's something that we do at the Minority Programmers, but we're also wanting to train other people, because that's huge potential as well. NFTs, how to deploy that, how to make a meme marketplace is also something that is a prize track. The trading bot, like we said, and the front end for that. Governance, like we mentioned, like with Compound and your day with the Wi-Fi token is also a concept that we're looking at as well. And so there's really, like, from a philosophical standpoint, there's the question of like, how do I make this so it's on like smart contracts? And I think especially with governance, that is something that they've been deciding since the Greeks. And so like having this ability to discuss and see different avenues for actually facilitating this is going to be fun, and kind of the future workshops we have to plan. If you do have any kind of suggestions or questions for workshops, like I definitely let us know. We'll be reaching out. Even so, I think after the conference, a lot of people have been hitting us up to do additional workshops. So we might add that content, and we want to continue to do blockchain hackathons and workshops, because especially being international network developers, access to banking is something we really care about, and blockchain is a solution to that. And so we're definitely going to dive in first in the space. And I know at the Minority Programmers, we're actually converting our whole ecosystem into a decentralized application where it can be run without kind of a central authority, and people are incentivized to do actions to help minorities. So that's in store coming this summer as well. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. If anyone doesn't have any questions, we can stop this session. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming on. Any final questions?